Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by the Cal State Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Good afternoon. It is March 26th, 2025, and we are here for Webinar Wednesday number 340. Got a good one today. Got a good one as always, but really interesting, timely topics. Going to talk AI and the AI environment in Kern County, business, application use, all kinds of fun stuff coming up. Well, we're going to be talking about a new, hot Kern artificial intelligence startup. We're going to get into some of the things going on with one of my favorite serial entrepreneurs and talk about the environment right now in Kern County and the environment for a lot of businesses. So a lot of great stuff coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about, before we get to Jim Damian, about our grow and expand techniques, tools, and program. It's a kind of a series that spun out of some economic data that we found very interesting and are going to continue to do that. And one thing that we're going to do is provide a definition today. You know, in kind of our tagline, we like to say that we help businesses start, grow, expand, and transition. So occasionally, grow and expand sound like the same thing. It's like we're being a little redundant, but our differences that we will explain is basically, you know, at least from my perspective, is that a growing business is one that is increasing sales and profitability, while an expanding business could be doing the same, but maybe potentially they are also expanding the locations, expanding the customer base, expanding the products and services that they provide. Expanding businesses generally need more space, more capital in order to get to that next level. So that's a little bit about how we explain the differences there. Today, we will have, again, the topic that I said we would never discuss again is actually going to be discussed again. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. Our capital quarter, you know, we have two regular columns, two regular features on Webinar Wednesday, and those two are your capital quarter and also your economic corner. Your capital quarter today is going to focus on expanding businesses, on the expanding business side of things, not the growing, but the expanding. And our economic corner is we are still reeling from a very positive way from the local data that we shared with you a couple of weeks ago and are continuing to look at some of the possibilities in helping small businesses grow and expand here in Kern County and beyond throughout the Central California region. We will have some news, information, and resources to help you thrive. Our producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, Webinar Wednesday producer, will be adding things to the chat box. Chat box will be going, and we'll have answers to your questions live after today's presentation. So if you have a presentation, or if you have a presentation, let me know for a future webinar. But if you have a question, that's a little bit more pertinent for right now. You want to go to the Q&A box and put that question in there, and we'll take it right following Mr. Damian's presentation. Our resources are going to be in the chat box, and we do have a poll question, a very simple poll question today, doing a little market research on our end of things, and it's a two-parter. And the two-parter is going to be essentially, you know, how you use AI and how do you project using AI in the future. So two very simple questions on how much you use AI now. Is it none, some? I use it regularly. I use it all the time. And then after that question, you get question number two, is how much do you hope to increase your use of AI in the next year? So how much do you use AI now? How much do you hope you're going to be using it in a year from now? And jump in and answer our two little basic questions on AI for today. So tied with today's theme is the artificial intelligence is our two questions. How much do you use AI? None, some regularly, or I use it all the time. Well, I don't use it all the time, but I hope to increase maybe next year. Part two of the question, how do you plan to use it in the next year? A ton, which is more or less all the time. More than some, or none of no use of AI. Okay, we do have 56% of you participating. Get that thing over 60. You know, 60 is my threshold on the polls. We'll get it over 60 and give you just a couple of moments to get in. Last call for poll question today on your use of AI and your proposed use of AI. So we'll go ahead and end the poll. And our poll is showing 60% of you participating. There's your results. 43% of you right now use it some, while another 36% use it none. So there's the 80% rule in effect. 80% of you use it some or none, and 20% of you use it regularly or all the time. And where does that hope to change in the future? Well, look at that. More than some and a ton are basically your 80%, 77% of you will hope to change that from little use to a lot of use. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing your thoughts today in the poll, and let's move along. Okay, so one of the things that we've been talking about on Economic Corner is, of course, the kind of like, in our Economic Corner, just as a reminder, is it's our look at how general economic conditions affect small business. There are so many ways in your small business that you can manage away a lot of the potential threats and difficulties that you have. But really, general economic conditions is one of the real hardest to do. And kind of they're like thrust on all business owners, either in a region or across the country. So what we do with our Economic Corner is we like to look at, how they affect small businesses, but also how local driven economic data helps your business succeed and helps drive some policy that makes it better. So 2 weeks ago, we had our resident economist, Dr. Mark Evans, on, and he talked about a number of things that, they're made the front page of the Bakersfield Californian. And some of those were kind of startling statistics based on small businesses and small businesses between 0 and 49 employees. A lot of small businesses will use definitions up to 500 employees. But at the Small Business Development Center, really our sweet spot is those 0 to 49 employees. Those are where we kind of hang a lot of our time and do a lot of our work. But we learned that day that the average pay for Kern small businesses was 95% of the total average for the county. So we saw that for the entire county, the average pay is $52,000, and small businesses were paying $50,000. So it equated out to 95% of that total average. Whereas statewide, we looked at the numbers and it was just 65%. One of the other revealing stats was that small businesses with 5 to 8 employees, they pay 30% more than those of you that employ 0 to 4 employees. So for us at the Small Business Development Center, if we can help you grow from 0 to 4 employees, maybe expand with some funding or other ways, then it's likely that your employees are going to earn more money. And you see the difference there per hour is 0 to 4 employees, the average hourly wage is $18.22. And from 5 to 8, it is $23.80. So more employees equate to then more for the business owner would be the conclusion drawn. And then the other thing is the 0 to 4 employees at the business establishment over the last 3 years, and this was based on economic data from the Employment Development Department, or EDD. So from the third quarter of 2020 to the most recent information in the third quarter of 2023, in Kern County, it grew 3 times more than the state average. So we are growing a lot more 0 to 4 business establishment, 0 to 4 employee business establishment than statewide. And so we want to know how we can help you and help these particular firms. Also that day, we learned that in Kern County, it's a larger share of the Kern payroll. 40% of our payroll is paid by small businesses compared to only 30% statewide. We also saw some growth in the 10 to 19 range for those in businesses that employ 10 to 19, as also exceeding the state average and maybe being a sweet spot for where we can provide greater assistance and help them in those particular areas. And so those are a few of the things that kind of jump off to us. So in looking at that and looking at the need to help grow employees, our capital quarter today looks at acquisition funding options to expand your business. So what are some of the ways that you can fund, expand your business? One of them is through acquisition or acquiring or buying another small business. So, growth from acquisition, one of the things that is advantageous for somebody wanting to buy a small business is that oftentimes it is funded with assistance from the seller. These small businesses, what they do is oftentimes when they go for sale, no seller wants to carry back financing. They don't want to finance it. But the economic realities is many times that is the case. Actually, I would say most times that is the case. And for them to get out of the particular business, maybe it's not profitable enough to be sold or be funded by a bank or an SBA funding option. But there is one funding option that is unknown to many people out there, and it is one to where actually, if you can actually borrow the down payment and actually receive 100% funding to help fund that particular small business. Now, there's some conditions, but 100% financing really hard to get in a lot of businesses, but for certain business acquisitions at the SBDC, we can show you how to do that. So, bullet number three kind of zooms in on, it's not the desired outcome for the seller, but it is often realistic in order to carry back that funding. So those make it easier to actually purchase businesses that are being sold. And oftentimes the businesses that are for sale, they're kind of out there, and as a great way to expand your base, uh, there a lot of them exist out there that you wouldn't think of. I like to characterize them with all these C's here. We have competitors, obviously, that's pretty easy to figure out, and compatible businesses and others. But let's start and go through these real quick. So one way to grow your sales and revenue, or to grow your base and profitability and your employee base potentially, and ultimately bringing home more money as a business owner, is to acquire a competitor. You could increase your market share. Actually, you could acquire their customer base. There's a lot of ways where acquiring a customer, or excuse me, a competitor makes a lot of sense. So competitors are definitely one type of business that you might look to acquire. Others are compatible businesses, businesses that are compatible by adding services or products that increase and are mutually beneficial for both businesses. So a compatible business might be an easy way for you to do an add-on for either services or products to help increase sales. And again, increasing sales is always nice at the SBDC, but we really want you to increase your profits. It's always nice what you can bring home. Another way is to look at businesses that are generating really strong historic cash flow, and we call those the cash cows. So the cash cows generally cost a little bit more. They're usually a little more competitive to buy. But the cash cows are out there to where you see that if you just step into that particular business, you can operate it and just bring that particular cash flow, giving all things interest, all things included being the same. Now, the thing about acquiring businesses is you really need to do a lot of due diligence on the business that you're acquiring. And really, it is kind of a strong way for those of you that are looking to acquire uh, those particular business. One thing that I think gets really overlooked are conquering businesses or conquerors. And those are a lot of the distressed firms that either close or just, you know, shut down. So they'll close or they will just shut down and liquidate. So same thing with the retiring business. You could retire the business, and oftentimes the business owner thinks that there's not much value there other than just liquidating the business assets that they have. But there could be a lot of value hitting there for others that really want to move on to that particular business. And by other things that I would be looking at is I would look at potentially maybe they have a favorable lease. and it's assumable. Maybe they have debt that's assumable, and that's a way in order to compensate them as well by assuming debt. We've seen some of the COVID era idle, the economic injury disaster loans that a lot of people got, basically 3.8 million across the country. And actually moving in and acquiring that debt, it gives you an opportunity to move in that direction. So what we're getting at is a lot of different ways to actually move and to acquire businesses to move on. I thought I'd never say this again, but the beneficial ownership information reporting is back again. And just to add one quick thing is 99% of businesses that we talk with now are not actually being required to file. It is basically going to be foreign companies that are registered to do business in any state or an Indian tribe. So basically the foreign companies are the ones are going to be the only ones that are subjected. We've been talking about some of the local disasters here, and that's another way to grow your business is to grow your capital base if your sales have been damaged. Kind of a strange way of looking at it, but true. You can actually get a disaster loan that can bide you over and hold you if you have been affected by any of these disasters. Most of these are outside of Kern County, but if you sell into those particular areas, particularly we're looking at Ventura and Los Angeles counties. If you have sales in there that were impacted by any of the disasters, you could qualify for low interest rate, good term financing. If you need human resource help, the human resource hotline is available for employers. And there you see a list of numbers that are available throughout the Central Coast, the San Joaquin Valley, and the Sierra Range, along with the Eastern Sierra. So find the number that fits your particular county, and you can call and get your questions answered at no cost from this service provided by the California Employers Association. A lot of tools here at the SBDC. We'll get into some of these later on. Really, the most compatible tool with what we're talking about is with AI. A couple of our products have AI, like LivePlan has an AI function built into it, but really the Vertical IQ, which is this incredible database of industry available market research and industry-based information, really something that I need to talk about coming up in the next few weeks in much greater detail. Our community calendar focuses all of the good things happening in our community. This is an event that's coming up through our Central California SBDC region, all about mastering digital marketing. And so this series is a two-part series. You can find the link in the chat box. Maureen will send you there. And if you're interested in mastering digital marketing, there is your opportunity. And to contact us for confidential, no cost, no obligation, expert consulting, go to our website, csubsbdc.com, sign up for services, join us for no cost, no fee advising. And that brings us to today's special guest. And our special guest today is Jim Damian, and he is the founder of the AI startup pronounced Linean. And Linean is just a brand new organization. But back in 2005, a short 20 years ago, Jim founded Stria, an acclaimed digital transformation company that uses technology and continuous improvement to reduce burdens associated with business process. I just called it a data company, but a five-time Inc. 5000 honoree, the Bakersfield 2022 Business of the Year. Also, Jim was mentioned the 2021 Business Person of the Year. In 2022, later that year, Jim completed the sale of Stria and transitioned on to his next opportunity. Jim was named the Chief County Economic Development Officer and prioritized regional diversification, targeting and bringing in new businesses, creating jobs. An entrepreneur, two-time Ironman finisher, first generation college graduate, Kern County native from Tehachapi, holds an undergraduate degree from San Diego State University and a master's from the University of California. And among his various and many community involvements and community commitments, we're very proud that Mr. Damian is a member of our advisory board with the Central California Small Business Development Center Network. Jim, it's great to have you on. Thank you for joining us and take it away, please.
Kelly, thanks for having me. Sure appreciate you to be with you all. And if you do have questions as I kind of get started, I will be keeping an eye on the chat, or Maureen will help me. But you can put questions in the chat. Again, my name is Jim Damian, and I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all today. And of course, our fearless leader, Kelly, and his trusty colleague, Maureen. Thank you for the invitation. I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint today. I just want to talk about what's really happening on the front lines, at least in Kern County, with AI and how it might impact some of you on this call. I'll start with this. I've been in the technology space for most of my life. As Kelly said, I had a technology company here. We sold that. We can do a webinar on that whole experience later. But I've been working in this space for a long time, and the reason I got into the technology services space is because I thought it was just a really great way to create opportunities, right, in terms of good jobs. So it's important to me as a Tehachapi native to come back to Kern County and contribute, right, to the regional growth and to the economic vitality. And so I'm happy to be doing that. I did take a short break after our last sale and went to the government. I loved working for the county of Kern, spent about 2 years there as a public servant. And so, you know, I've lived in both sides of the fence as a public servant as well as an entrepreneur. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing at Linean, my new company, and how we're helping people think about artificial intelligence. You know, I think in one way to think about AI, so basically, let me set the table. I'm going to talk to you about kind of the history of AI, what it actually is doing, what it's not doing, and then we're going to have a little fun and we'll do some experiments in the browser. So if you have questions, again, things you want to hear about, pop them in the chat and we'll tackle them. I think if I was, well, not if, the fact that I am running a business in Kern County, I would encourage us all to think about all technology, including AI, as sort of a leveling. In the old days, when you wanted to start a technology company or get access to great technology, you'd have to leave and go to Silicon Valley or LA to get trained, to buy, to research. You can do it now from your home, your office, not just get trained and learn, but actually use these great tools. And we're going to dive into some of those today. If as a business owner, I think it's important for us to think about how we can be more efficient. The world is very flat. In other words, our competition is not just in a different part of the state. Those of us who run businesses anywhere in the US, we're competing with people all over the globe. So it's important to have the best tools. We know that we've got some amazing industries in Kern County, including energy, traditional oil and gas, as well as renewables, agriculture, right? And a lot of people on this call are part of those industries or sell into those industries. And so I think it's important to be thinking about how we can leverage this technology to expand those industries and to create new industries. So I think that sets the table. This is a tool. If you're not using it today, you need to start as soon as we get off this call. If you are using it, keep going, keep experimenting. The part of the reason I don't have a slide deck today is because almost everything I show you will be different in 2 weeks. It's quite stark how rapidly the tools are changing. We saw on the poll before we started, you know, almost half of us are using AI all the time. So that's really great. Let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. Okay. It's often referred to, this AI, artificial intelligence, or ML, machine learning, is thought of as a kind of a smart brain that can help you do tasks faster, make better decisions. I think that's all true. I'm going to share a screen. I'm going to share a screen with you all right now. What it's not doing, at least not yet, it's not thinking. Okay. Artificial intelligence is not thinking. It can fool us into believing, or it can emulate thought, but it is not thinking, not yet. Maybe it will. That's called AGI, artificial general intelligence. We're not there yet. We may get there. But right now we are at a place where you could think of AI as the world's greatest prediction engine. And I'll tell you what I mean by that as we kind of go through, but it's really a predictor based on information and training It can predict what the next word in a sentence should be, or how to structure a sentence based on historical patterns that we've used to train the AI. So instead of just following simple instructions like a calculator, AI can be trained. It can learn from data. It can answer questions and even make suggestions, sort of like an assistant, right? Hopefully you all are using it to write emails, improve emails, analyze data, right? We can do data entry. We can use AI to do data entry, and we can make forecasts. But if you look at the history, AI kind of hit the mass popular culture over the past about 2 years. But it started way back in the 1950s, right? Where scientists started asking, can machines think? It was back then when a guy named Alan Turing came up with a test called the Turing test. And he said, if a computer can chat with a human, he was thinking verbal, but if a human can interact with a computer and the human doesn't know it's interacting with a computer, that's AI. And I would say we're pretty much there, right? There are some of these tools that we're interacting with that sure seem, it's sure hard to know if it's AI or not. In the 60s and the 70s and 80s, we started to see advanced use of machine learning and artificial intelligence. The problem was the slowness of processing the data, right? A lot of the technology was there. In the 90s, IBM had Watson, right? The AI supercomputer that was able to emulate thought, and that was kind of one of the early true AI machines. In the 2000s, Google hit the scene, and we start seeing the use of AI and machine learning to like help cars drive around. And then in the teens, the investment in AI led to where we are today, which is AI is everywhere. I mean, any computer application you use, whether it's a Google search or a Microsoft search or, a product you buy, QuickBooks has AI components in it now. I think the toaster that I bought says it has AI. It's kind of almost overused, but the way it works today is people feed, and by people I mean companies, they feed data into these models and into these computers, and it sort of trains the model how to produce results that make sense. So we're using algorithms, machine learning to understand text that comes in and to predict what might be the right text or the right imagery based on your the way the model has been trained. And that, of course, in the back end uses something called a large language model. And that's just a model that's been trained using massive amounts of text, right? Books, websites, conversations. So these companies like OpenAI, they've uploaded and pointed these engines at the internet. So like OpenAI, that company that produces ChatGPT, that has read the entirety of the internet many times, and it continues to update its data set. So that's why when you ask ChatGPT to write an email, it can do it pretty good because it's been exposed, and we've created algorithms based on, quite candidly, the history of the human language. And so we can do that because we have massive amounts of compute power, and that's why we're able to do it. I'm going to show you some tricks that you can use to make your businesses run better. But I did kind of want to set the playing field here and say, no, AI is not thinking yet. It is basically a pattern recognition tool that can help you make decisions by predicting what might happen based on everything we fed it. So it's got, limited creativity. It's not thinking yet, but it can give you a competitive advantage. AI is not going to take your job, but another company using AI might take your customers. So that's something to think about. So let's switch over. Let me switch over to ChatGPT. Many of you have used this on your phone. You used it on your desktop computer. And so I want to go through a couple examples of ways you can use these tools, but also point out, there are a number of different AI models. ChatGPT is the most common. I'm showing you that now. This is another one called Claude, which some of you may have used before. And as I'm tabbing through these screens, hopefully your screens are changing. I'm still sharing this image, so let me know if anybody's not seeing my screen. You can chat it if you want. But Claude is another AI model from a company called Anthropic. This is Google's model called Gemini, which you're seeing on the screen. And then our friend Elon Musk, who runs the company called Tesla, as well as SpaceX, has an AI company called Grok, or a product rather called Grok. So these are 4 of the common large language model based chatbots that exist out in the world that we can do interesting things with. And they might give you different results, right? So I have a prompt here. A prompt is a set of instructions. So I'm going to type into ChatGPT, I'd like you to create an image. And I'll say please, because I'll have good manners. And it'll ask me to describe the image. And so here's a description of my image. Okay, I'm going to upload this text, and I say I want the lighting, golden hour with long shadows. I copied and pasted this from another window I have open, but this is the instructions to ChatGPT. Create an image, and I give it a lot of notes, a mix of sleek, futuristic skyscrapers, biomorphic structures that resemble interwoven plants, blah, 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 blah. You can make this say whatever you want. And what's happening right before our very eyes, you see ChatGPT creating an image based on this prompt. And if I put this prompt in again, it would give me a different image. One thing that's really interesting, right? I could take this same prompt, and you can see here, let's see how the image is. I don't know. What do you guys think? That's interesting. So what's cool is, I mean, this image has never before been created in the history of mankind. This is something that the algorithm and the large language model and the image model created based on my prompt. And if we were to type it in again, we would get a totally different image. Maybe it'd be similar, but it would be different. And we can really articulate the difference between these models if I copy the same text. And let's go to one of our different models, right? This was ChatGPT. Here's another one called Claude. And I'm going to say, actually, let me start with the same thing. Create an image. Create an image for me using this information. And so what will happen now is Claude will do the same thing. And you can guess what is going to happen, right? It's not going to be the same image. Certainly not the same image that ChatGPT created for me. It's spinning away. It's using its processing power and my prompt to create a futuristic golden hour cityscape. Again, we had ChatGPT do it. Here's the image. I can type the same information into Claude, and it's going to give me a different outcome. And I could do this in all 4 or 5 or pick 100 different large language model based bots to create images, and they'd all be different. So look at this one. Same exact instructions. Those of you who have employees and trained employees, this is a good illustration. You can give a human or a computer the same instructions, and you'll get something radically different. Just to hammer the point home, if I did this, I'm not going to do it, but if I did the same thing in Grok, it would give me yet a different image. So same instructions and radically different images between the 2 platforms. Now, if we want to get even more creative, we could, in your businesses, let's take a step back. In your businesses, you maybe creating images is something you do, maybe it's not. But I would be willing to guess that everybody here has data about their organizations. Maybe it's sales data, maybe it's different kind of data. But I have a data set here I'm going to pull over, right? And this is a thousands of row data set. And this is fake data, right? But this would be like if you ran a sales report for your company. We've got an order number column. This is basically order data. The order date, the status. I'm sure many people on this call receive spreadsheets like this all the time that they have to then sort and hunt and peck to come up with some answers about their business, right? Maybe it's invoices, maybe it's credit card statements, maybe You know, if you're Mr. Kelly Bearden, it has to do with the riches that you have, you know, and this is how maybe he manages his stock portfolio. I'm not sure. But let's just say you had a big data set like this. You know, you can go into ChatGPT and you can say, please analyze this data for me. And so I can type that prompt. Before I hit submit, I will upload the data, which is just saved on my desktop, or rather in my download file, sales sample data. And you know, if I were to, so I'm going to go ahead and hit send. So now the ChatGPT tool is analyzing this data. And you can imagine if somebody sent me this spreadsheet and said, hey, Jim, analyze this data and tell me some trends you could pull out of it. I mean, this is how many lines, how many rows is this? This is 2024 rows. It would take me a while, you know, not all day. It might take me a couple, you know, minutes to turn it into a table and then do some sorting and then try and come up with an answer. Whereas our good friend ChatGPT has looked at this and it's analyzed the data. So now what I can do is I can ask it some questions like, you know, there were some products in there. So I could say, which product lines generate the most revenue? And then you know, if somebody asked me that, I could pull up this spreadsheet and eventually figure it out. But with these large language models, analyzing the data set happens almost instantaneously, right? So it's chugging away. This is the law of live demos, and it has my product lines and my revenue, my sales revenue. Okay, so I didn't have to sort the data. I just had to ask some questions. I could do the same thing by saying, what are the top 10 customers by total sales, right? Again, I could figure that out. It would take me a few minutes inside of that big spreadsheet. But with ChatGPT, powered by OpenAI, now I can all of a sudden upload the data and query it, right? So there's my customers. I can see that Euro Shopping Channel was $912,000. Again, I could get this the old-fashioned way, but I'm saving time. It's not changing my life. It's not telling me what to do with my sales or how to get more sales. It is telling me answers to specific questions. Now, I could, if I really was brave, I could ask, do you have any advice on how to increase sales? I'm curious as to what ChatGPT would say. I would not take this as an answer that I would go implement today, but you know, this is kind of an ideation here. It says, well, if you ask me, I'm going to tell you. Double down on top performing product lines. Classic cars and vintage cars are clearly your revenue drivers. So you can see right out of the gate, I'm getting ideas from my virtual assistant and my thought partner, ChatGPT. And you could imagine if I came over here to Claude and start asking it the same questions, I might get the same answers, but maybe not. So, you know, if I open a calculator, and I say 1 + 1, it's going to give me 2. And if I open a different calculator, right, and I say 1 + 1, it's going to give me 2. AI is different, right? Let me give you an example. And this is a quite stark example. Let's go to Gemini. Okay, Gemini is Google's large language model. And let's ask it a controversial question. Let's say, okay, Gemini, again, this is a different model. Tell me about Tiananmen Square. As those of you will remember, this was a protest. There was a very well-known protest in 1989 when the students rallied in favor of democracy, right? And so it's giving me some historical significance, but Gemini is also telling me about the 1989 protest. Let's go to ChatGPT. Let's ask the same question. Let's say, tell me about the Tiananmen Square protests of 1999. And let's see what ChatGPT says. Oh, 1989. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Okay. No, the chat bot was right. I typed in the wrong thing. 1989. So Tiananmen Square protest, and it gives me a full explanation, a massive pro-democracy protest in Beijing. Now, some of you may have heard, I'm going to switch to a different bot. Let's go to something called DeepSeek. DeepSeek is a large language model produced in China, and it is not a that's not a society and a government and a country with total freedom of expression. So maybe there is some bias that we can find in the DeepSeek tool. Tell me about Tiananmen Square protests of 1989. Let's see what we get back. Sorry, that's beyond my current scope. Let's talk about something else. Now, what if I ask it, tell me about the January 6th incident in Washington, D.C.? Let's see if it'll talk to me about that. Yes, violent attack on U.S. Capitol. So I'm sharing this to tell you and to illustrate that different AI tools have different biases. They're going to be good at different things. They're going to have different biases. They're going to have different capabilities. So it's very important, whether you're analyzing a sales spreadsheet or you are asking about historical events, to think about the bias you might be seeing in the answers, and to potentially do what I'm doing, and what many of our customers are doing, which is to use different tools. So every day I have ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini, all open to be able to engage and ask and ideate. I don't use DeepSeek because, well, there's a few reasons for that. One is the implicit bias that we've just seen. So that is a very, clear demonstration to show we've got some bias and some inaccuracies in various models. A couple other things we're seeing with our clients in terms of how AI is being used. We recently built a website to share the success of a local grant maker here, the Kern County Creative Core. So what I'm showing you on the screen now is their website, which we helped write, and this is the reporting site to demonstrate what the grant. They received a $4.2 million grant to re-grant that to local artist organizations. So KDA wanted to demonstrate the impact of their funds. So they sent us spreadsheets and PDF files, and we use those using AI to create this dashboard. So in the old days, we would have to have data scientists, data engineers, computer programmers to build this tool. Rather, in the modern age, in the age of AI, we use AI to create this website. It's out there at kdacc.ai, and it tabulated for us, and we checked the math, how many direct jobs were created, indirect jobs, and what the cost was to generate those jobs. So again, this was not done by a data scientist. This was done by an AI engineer using Claude, that AI tool that I told you about, using that tool to actually generate this website. So the point here is, this took something in the old days, like 3 years ago, would take 3 months to build a tool that showed us the metrics about a grant program like this. But with AI, we're able to develop and publish very real data based on PDFs and spreadsheets without having to hire a computer programmer. So that's another way that service companies are using AI to streamline operations. I would encourage all of you, as we kind of round third base here, I'm going to open it up to questions here in a second, but I would encourage all of you, the software you already own, whether it's from Microsoft or Google or Intuit, there are AI tools you're already paying for that you have access to. I spend a lot of time in the contract management space. DocuSign CLM has an AI tool that allows you to use AI to analyze the risk profile of a contract. It's not an attorney, but it can flag high risk and low risk clauses in a contract. I think that's quite good. I will also leave you with a piece of advice. There is, you can Google, there's 100 of these out there, but you'll hear the term prompt engineering. It's how you can actually ask your agent, your large language model agent, your chatbot from people like ChatGPT or Claude. You can ask a question. And so these prompt engineering cheat sheets can help you ask the right question. So like, for example, act as a teacher and create a cover letter in Microsoft Office, right? And so you can start to use these cheat sheets to help you get better results from your chatbot. Let me give you an example. So let's say I'm going to quit my job, which we hope nobody does. Write me a letter of resignation. Let's see what it says. Right? It's probably going to give me a response that's pretty vague. I think this is going to be my last experiment in the browser here, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Kelly Marine. We can do a little bit of Q&A. Well, it's slow, right? Here's a personal respectful resignation letter template. So now it's giving me a template. Now let's say, as it's writing that, I could also say, I've been at my company, Acme Inc., for 20 years. I'm quitting over the reduction in my pay. Write me a letter. It's going to be different, right? This first one I just said, write me a letter of resignation. Please accept this letter, formal notice, blah, blah, blah. The next one, I say, write me a letter of recognition. I've been at my company for 20 years. I'm quitting, basically in protest over the reduction in my pay. Write me a letter. It's going to sound totally different because I'm using these prompts to create a better instruction for my agent, right? So now it's going to be slightly different letter with some more points. And then I can, of course, tweak this and edit this and use it. So the whole point of this is to give you a little flavor for how you can start using this today in your company. And where we're really going at Linean is to help organizations figure out how to adopt this technology and scale it out across the enterprise. There are different versions of all these agents, and we help organizations pick the right agent. By the way, I strongly encourage you to use a paid version of all of these because most of them, the free, they will use your information to train their model. Whereas if we have a paid version, they do not use your input to refine and train their model. So anyway, that's we've got a few minutes left for Q&A, but those are some tips and tricks on how you can use artificial intelligence today, if you're not already using it to do some of those analysis and generative tasks like writing emails or improving emails. And it gives you a flavor for the state of the state, which is it's the Wild West. And what we're doing now, and all the service providers in AI are doing, is to help organizations figure out how to adopt this and allow their companies to be more successful, allow their staff to have a better time at work. And so that's those are my main points, and I'd be happy to take any questions from the crew here.
Hey, fantastic stuff, Jim. First question right down here. Thank you, Claudia, for the question. It is, I have seen people assume AI is 100% accurate. However, it is also credited with hallucinating. How would you suggest a user can be good at evaluating and critiquing before using?
Yeah, so AI certainly is not 100% accurate because it's built by humans, and humans are not 100% accurate. So I agree with that assertion, Claudia. And yes, it does hallucinate, especially with creating images, right? So I think for me, it's all about experimenting and maybe using two different agents to create your content, and then doing some fact checking, right? If the AI is writing a letter, you can read it and kind of adjust it with your own tone. That's always a good thing. If it's giving you actual factual data, I always do a ground truth, right? A reality check and use some known sources to get the data. I'll give you another little trick, Claudia, and everybody on the call. If you ask one of the agents a question. What was the top song from 1996? You used to Google it. Now you can ask ChatGPT. What was the top pop song in 1996? It'll give you an answer. Sometimes, and I do this all the time, say, please check your work and use multiple sources to validate. It'll do it. It'll go out, look at other sources, and come back with maybe the same answer or a refined answer. So something as simple as please check your work can add to the accuracy, but it can make mistakes. You have to check it. And the other question that I see from Claudia is, how do you avoid sounding like other companies? You can upload your own documents and emails and say, using my tone of voice, write me a letter pitching my company services. Right? So if you have some documents you've written before, you can upload those and say, using my tone and voice and my personality, please do this. And it'll do it. So that's another way to not sound like, you know, the neighbor next door.
Okay, got a next question for you, Jim. How can we incorporate an AI option into our business website to respond to questions? That is, so it responds accordingly to items and information specific to my business.
So you can do that. A lot of, there's two ways really. One is to build a chat bot from scratch, right? And you can do that and plug it into your website. And that would, you know, you could upload your product catalog into a system and create a chat bot from scratch that uses a large language model like OpenAI and a process called RAG, R-A-G, which allows you to incorporate your own corporate documentation into the chatbot. That's a time-consuming and expensive way to do it. Many tools in the customer relationship management category, CRM, things like Zoho or HubSpot or Salesforce, they have pre-built agents where you can upload your information, your product catalog, your help guides, and plug that into your website, right, as a widget, and it can, then that technology can power that portion of your site. That's what I would do, unless I was running a multinational large company where I needed my own private, you know, chatbot. Then I might build it from scratch. But I would use a out-of-the-box customer relationship management tool such as HubSpot, Zoho, Salesforce. You upload your own data, your own documents, and then you can plug that chatbot onto your website and allow people to interact with your data in a controlled environment. Much easier, much faster, much better than building something from scratch, which would take significantly more time and money. And don't forget, if you did something like that, you know, every time you send a query to these engines, it costs money. Now, for $20 a month, you can have ChatGPT and you get a huge number of tokens and you hardly ever run out. But you know, if you open up in the public internet and you built your own application, you're paying someone for, you know, you're paying OpenAI like a fraction of a penny per query. Somebody, you know, wants to do bad things and run up your bill, they could do it. So that's why I recommend for that kind of use case to use something out of the box like Zoho or HubSpot or Salesforce.
Jim, what are the legal implications of bad information given by AI? And what are best practices that management can follow?
Yeah, you know, if you ask AI, all the models now, if you ask a legal question, it would say that they all start out with, I cannot give legal advice. So I think, you know, it's no different than asking your friend or your neighbor next door, you know, what should I do in this case? If you get bad advice and you execute on it, it's still on you as the actor, if there are ramifications to that. So it's just like taking advice from anybody who's not a lawyer. So if there are legal questions, I always refer people, make sure you run this by your attorney, right? So yeah, you are liable if you use AI, you know, to generate incorrect information. As companies, we are liable for that, no different than if our employees generate bad information. So some of this is still being tested in the court. We will see where it lands. It's very new and very nascent, so I'm not sure where the courts are going to land on liability based on AI. But at the end of the day, there's a human in that loop, and if humans enable bad information to be, you know, released, it'll be on us. I don't foresee lawsuits against OpenAI or ChatGPT. They'll be against companies that have humans that are going to write a check.
Jim, what is your opinion on what type of jobs are most vulnerable to AI?
Well, let's start with the least vulnerable. The least vulnerable to be disrupted soon would be things like plumbers and builders and forklift operators and people that do things in the real world. So those will be the last to be significantly impacted. They will enjoy training modules, they will enjoy information, they will enjoy all sorts of, collaborative sort of engagement if you're doing something in the real world. The most quick to be disrupted will be two categories. One, data entry. Data entry is going away. For $200 a month, you can have a service on OpenAI that will handle moving things from spreadsheet to the web, or from the web to spreadsheet, or from a spreadsheet to a print file. Data entry is going away. I think the software engineer is the other one that's very vulnerable. I just showed you earlier a website we built with an AI architect. In the old days, like 3 years ago, you would need a data analyst, a web programmer, and a database administrator to build a website. 3 jobs. Now you only need 1 to do a basic site that has analytics embedded. So there's some great data out there that's stark and striking about, software developers and computer programmers, application developers. We're hiring less and less of those because these models can do it for us. So there's huge disruption. I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. And I'll leave you with this thought. I believe that the AI evolution, maybe revolution that we're in right now, is as big as the electric light bulb. The electric light bulb didn't ruin society and it didn't change it overnight, but it changed it radically over years. And I think we're going to see the same thing with artificial intelligence. It is as big of a disruptor as the electric light bulb. And so how we leverage that as the occupants of the planet Earth, is going to be on us to figure out. But it's that big, and it's coming, it's here. And so I commend everybody who jumped on today's webinar. The fact that you're leaning into it and learning about it is a huge testament. So I'd expect nothing less from the best businesses in Kern County, which some of them are on here. So
Fascinating stuff, Jim. I know I'm inspired, Jim. I want to use AI to get rid of the image behind me for next week's webinar. So by next week, have a different image, and I'm inspired now because I fit in that 80% of none and some, although I consider myself some on that. First poll question today. So my other task, if I'm going to complete 2 tasks, is I did read a little something very recently about potentially quitting Google search for AI, and I am going to try that in the next week. So there's my 2 things of moving forward, Jim.
I love it. I love it. If you need any help, give me a call, Kelly. We'll solve the problems of the world together, my friend. And thank you for having me so much.
Let's do that, and let's have you come back soon. I want you to talk in a little more detail next time about the local ecosystem with AI. There's a lot going on in Kern County and AI, and Linean's going to be a big player in all that. So as you get a little time to get on down the road with it, come on back and join us.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, that wraps us up. Webinar Wednesday 340. Thanks to our special guest, Jim Damian. We will be back next week for Webinar Wednesday number 341. Our special guest will be Richard Chapman of the Kern EDC. And yes, Richard has said over the last several years, when are you going to have me on Webinar Wednesday? And now we know it's Webinar Wednesday 341. He's got some really great things for small businesses on a lot of things happening in the county that can help increase your sales. So join us next week. For our producer, Maureen Busherding, I'm Kelly Bearden. Goodbye, everybody.